Swaminama Vichetannamanubhistam Savitanyena Bhutale Swayam Rupam Kalamaya Didanti Swapadanti Kam. First of all, I offer my humble obeisances unto the lotus feet of my Diksha and Shiksha Guru, Nitya Lila Pravishna Om Vishnupad, Asutarasata Sri Srimad, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupad Maharaj. Then I offer my humble obeisances unto the lotus feet of my Shiksha and Sannyas Guru, Nitya Lila Pravishna Om Vishnupad, Asutarasata Sri Srimad, Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. Today I make a special offering unto the lotus feet of my first Shiksha Guru, Nitya Lila Pravishna Om Vishnupada Satarasata Sri Srimad, Srila Gour Govinda Goswami Maharaj. I make an offering unto the lotus feet of the Sri Rupanuga Guru Varga, Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Prabhupada, and Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur. And I offer my humble obeisances to all the Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis who are present here today. Dandavat Pranam. So, today I will tell you some pastimes. So first, we talk about Srila Prabhupada, and the principle is that you should glorify the extraordinary qualities of your Gurudev. Personal stories are nice. I'll tell a few. But first, we have to glorify the extraordinary qualities of Gurudev. So first I will tell you about the glories of Prabhupada. First of all, it should be understood that it was always Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur's, Prabhupada's mission, his idea, his concept, his understanding that it would be Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada who would travel to the West and preach the mission of Mahaprabhu in the West. It was always his understanding that he was the person who would go. No one else could actually really go. All of the persons who went, that was only biding time. It was his mission. His mission. Oh, Maharaj Gopal. Dandavat Maharaj Gopal ji, Haribol. Disciple of Prabhupada's dear godbrother, Srila Bhakti Vaibhav Puri Goswami. So, from the first time they met, Srila Prabhupada was instructed by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur that you are an educated young man, educated in the English language. You should preach the mission of Mahaprabhu in the Western world. But from the beginning, the first words that he uttered to him was this. So the instruction came immediately. The recognition of who he was and what he would do was immediate. In a letter written to Shamarani, although in the folio it says Jadharani, September 4th, 1972, Srila Prabhupada said, my eternal relationship began from the first time I heard him speak. On that day he gave the order, and I heard him speak, and that was the beginning of our eternal relationship. So, hearing the words of the Guru, from the beginning of hearing these words, that was the beginning of the relationship. So very important, it shows that he accepted that was the beginning of his relationship, and Saraswati Thakur accepted that he was the person who would fulfill this mission. Later, about 13 years later, Srila Prabhupada finally took initiation, Harinam and Diksha. We got both initiations at one time. So usually when Srila Saraswati Thakur would give initiation, he would give the person a name, and then he would ask him, so now that you're initiated, what service are you going to do for the month? So Srila Saraswati Thakur, he initiated Srila Prabhupada, he gave him Harinam, he gave him Diksha, and then he said nothing. So the disciples came and said, Prabhupada, you have given Harinam and Diksha to the devotee. You have not given him any name. He is already named. He is already named. Abhay Chalan. But that was understood that his father was a pure devotee, and that the name that was given to him by his father was his name in relationship to Srila Saraswati. And then they said, you have not given him any service to do? Srila Saraswati Thakur said, in time, he will do everything. But from the beginning, this was the position. Saraswati Thakur knew, this is the person. He will fulfill the mission of the month. Later on, when Srila Prabhupada was in Bombay, he helped to organize the manifestation of the Bombay Gaudiya Math on Bandra Road. So when he established the Bombay Gaudiya Math on Bandra Road, he was working at that time, his brother was there, Srila Prabhupada and his brother were working together to do a pharmaceutical business, which in those days was herbal formulas mostly, with some chemicals, but more natural. And Prabhupada had a lot of important relations with important businessmen, and so he got these men to make donations to help establish the center. So Srila Saraswati Thakur and Srila Sridhar Maharaj came from Calcutta to do the installation of the deity. First you have to offer there on the altar. Put some water. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and Srila Sridhar Maharaj came from Calcutta to install the deities in the Bombay Gaudiya Math. So there was one brahmachari who lived in that math, and he used to come to the temple in Juhu sometimes and sit with us and tell us stories about Srila Prabhupada and Srila Saraswati Thakur. So he told us that when Srila Saraswati Thakur and Srila Sridhar Maharaj had come, that they were in a room with this brahmachari, and Srila Sridhar Maharaj told to Srila Saraswati Thakur, he said, you should make Abhay Babu the Math commander. He has done everything to establish this Math. You should make him the Math commander. Then, at that time, when he said this, Srila Saraswati Thakur said to him, no, no, no. I have much bigger service for him to do than Math commander. Much bigger service. So we see, again, he's making this point. At that time, when they opened this Bombay Gaudiya Math, Hridoy Ban Maharaj, Srila Hridoy Ban Maharaj, had returned from England. He had just come back from his preaching mission in England. So he was the first one to go overseas for Srila Saraswati Thakur. So when he arrived in Bombay at that time. He was picked up at the dock. Srila Prabhupada went, Srila Sridhar Maharaj went. You see there's a picture of them all sitting there. And Prabhupada is there with a big mustache. So, at that time, after the installation ceremony, one day there was a discussion in Srila Saraswati Thakur's room. Srila Saraswati Thakur was there, Srila Sridhar Maharaj was there, and Bhakti Kamala Madhusudan Maharaj, who at that time was Narottam Brahmachari. And this Brahmachari and Prabhupada and a few others, they were all sitting together. So Srila Saraswati Thakur said, so Ban Maharaj has returned. So who will go next? Who will go next to preach in the West? Yes. Who will go next? So they were looking at each other and talking, and then Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, Narottam, he knows English very well. The Narottam used to be the editor at Amrita Bazar Patrika, which was one of the biggest newspapers in Bengal. So he was very good at speaking English language and editing and writing. He said, Narottam, he knows English very well. He can speak good English. He can go to the West. So then Narottam began crying, oh, Prabhupada, please don't make me go to the West. I don't want to go. I don't want to leave your lotus feet. I want to stay here, be with you. Please don't make me go to the West to preach. What I will do without your lotus feet. But Saraswati Thakur said, okay, don't worry, don't cry. All right. He said, besides, Abhay Babu will go and he will do everything. So again, he's making this point. Again and again, we see Srila Saraswati Thakur is making the point. That is our Srila Prabhupada, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj. He's the one who's going to do it. Finally, in 1936, at the last Navadvip Parikrama. So by that time, Goswami Maharaj, he had gone. The second person to go was Goswami Maharaj. There's a photograph of him giving a book to King George. So when he returned, and at that time, Srila Saraswati Thakur was expressing his heart. He said, Thakur Bhakti Vinod wanted that the mission of Mahaprabhu should be preached in the Western world. He ordered me to preach this mission in the West. And my saintly mother, Bhagavati Devi, on her deathbed, requested me that I should send preachers to the Western world to preach the mission of Mahaprabhu. He said, because of this, I have spent the lifeblood of the Gaudiya Math to send preachers to the West to preach the mission of Mahaprabhu. But until now, they have not been successful. So this was his opinion. This story is being related by one devotee. His name is Nayana Baba, but now I think he has left this world, but he's relating this story to my god brother, my god sister, So he told that Saraswati Thakur said until now they were not successful. He said then at that point he had been looking forward, straight, toward all of the saffron-clad sannyasis and brahmacharis who were sitting in the front. But then he turned and he looked over at the white dhotis, grihastas, and white dhoti brahmacharis in the side. So when he looked, he started staring very intently. Nayana Baba thought, he's looking at me? Then he realized, no, he's not looking, he's looking behind me. He turned, and there was Srila Prabhupada, A.C. Bhaktivedanta. And he was staring directly in the eyes of Srila Saraswati Thakur, and they were, Nayana Baba said, I could understand that they were looking at each other in a very deep and meaningful way. They were locked in a gaze. He said, after that, Srila Saraswati Thakur turned to the front again, to the front of the audience, and he said, today I have a prediction to make. No matter how long it takes, whosoever goes next to the Western world to preach the mission of Mahaprabhu, he will return to India with the whole world. And Prabhupada, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada fulfilled this prediction. He fulfilled it. So, this is very, very important to understand the glories of Prabhupada, that he was always the person that Saraswati Thakur had in his mind, in his heart, to be the one disciple who would fulfill this important mission given to him by Thakur Bhaktivinoda and his saintly mother Bhagavati Devi, to preach the mission of Mahaprabhu in the West. It was our Srila Prabhupada, my Srila Prabhupada, who fulfilled that desire, and it was Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's understanding always that it would be him and him alone who would complete this mission. So this is the first glory of Prabhupada that we should understand. Also, Srila Prabhupada told us once in Mayapur, he said, he was in a very special mood. He, meaning Krishna, he told me to come down here. But I told him I don't want to go to that dirty place. He said, no, if you go, I will arrange many palaces for you to live in. Then he said, but still I don't want to go. So then Prabhupada said, but he told me, I want you to go and write these books. I need you to go there and write all these books. Very important. So Prabhupada said, so I had to come because he wanted me to write. So this was a very important mission of Prabhupada, directly ordered to him by Krishna. You should come and write these. So he came to write the books, and these books are very powerful. They are very potent. They are very clear. They explain the most complex Siddhanta of Vedas and Vedanta in a very simple and direct manner. Now I'm going to tell you one very interesting story. We were in Africa. So there was one Indian man. His name was Dr. Patel. So So Dr. Patel was a big fan of Aurobindo. He had studied many of the books of Aurobindo. So he was coming to see Prabhupada and he was saying, certainly you must know about Aurobindo because he's Bengali. Yes, yes, I know Aurobindo. He is a brilliant man, so brilliant. He has written so many brilliant things. Yes, yes, yes. I want to read some things to you. Okay, you bring the book to you. So he came with the book and he read a few pages to Prabhupada, reading. And Aurobindo is like, or every word is like 40 syllables, you know. Very big American words, English words, British words, very big words, highly philosophical, very deep, very deep. So after he reads 2-3 pages, Dr. Patel said, just see how intelligent he is. He's so intelligent, he's so brilliant. Nobody can understand what he's saying. So Prabhupada looked at him and he said, if he was really intelligent, he would have written in such a way that anyone could understand. And this is the hallmark of Srila Prabhupada. Any person can read the book and understand immediately. I am not this body. I am the soul and Krishna is God. And the purpose of my life is to go to God. Very simple. His books are very simple, very direct, right to the point. And he keeps repeating the same themes in many different ways over and over again. So this is the brilliance of Srila Prabhupada. The brilliance of how he has presented this Vedic knowledge. Even today, I read his books again and again, and as I read them, I gain new perspectives, new understanding, new realizations. In fact, he told me this. He said, one time I came to his room. I used to come, when I was in Bombay, I used to go downtown to either make life members, collect donations of grains for the prasadam distribution, or to meet with politicians to get licenses and things. So when I would go down, then I would come back from downtown all the way to Juhu on the train. A long ride. Then I'd come back, I'd go to his room. So then I would sit down, so he would say, okay, what is the news of the day? He would always want to know, what is the news? He would say, what is the news? So then I would sit with him and I'd say, oh, today I did this and this, okay. So on this particular day I came, there was maybe 4, 5 Indian gentlemen sitting in the room. And I had not come for a few days. So I came this day. So he said to me, come in here, sit down. I said, well, you're busy now, blah, blah, blah. Come in and sit down. Okay, so I came in and sat down. He says it like that, you just down. I'm sitting there. Then he's talking to these men for like half an hour, 40 minutes. Another devotee came to the door. You, sit down. And two of us are sitting. So then after he preaches to these men for, about 40 minutes or so, they get up and they leave. And then he turns and he said, why are the two of you not coming here every day to hear me preach? If you don't come here every day and listen to me, explain the philosophy to the life members and other persons, how will you know how to preach to them? Every day I am teaching them the philosophy you should be here to hear. He said, I quoted this verse. Do you know where this verse comes from in the Gita? So I looked at him hoping he knew it. He looked at me hoping I knew it. That means you're not reading my books. You don't know where the verse comes from means you're not reading my books. He said, I want you should read my books every day. He said, even I am reading my books. He said, you know why I read my books every day? But at this point we didn't want to say anything because, we were already in hot water. So we didn't say anything. He said, I read my books every day because I don't write my books. And then he wasn't looking at us, he was looking into the air, into the sky. And it was very mystical. I'm going to be honest, when he started speaking, I felt like Krishna was in the room. He said, every day when I sit here to write my books, Krishna personally comes and dictates every word. He said, and I am writing the words of Krishna every day. Therefore, when I read my books, even I get new insights. Because Krishna is giving. And it was so, so powerful, the way he said it. You could feel Krishna was in the room. He said, I want that every day you should read my books and you should come and hear me speak and understand how to treat me. So we used to go. And so this is the other important thing. The mission of going to the West, but the mission was to write the books, and to distribute the books, and to make sure that everyone got these transcendental literatures. This was the mission. And he fulfilled that mission. He fulfilled that. A lot of times, when I go around the world and tell stories about Srila Prabhupada, I find the devotees are amazed at some of the stories that I tell about Prabhupada's softer side. Most of the devotees tell me, Maharaj, we never hear these kind of stories about Prabhupada. You always hear how he was shouting at this one, or shouting at that one, or yelling at this one, chastising this one. Yes, Prabhupada did do that. But Prabhupada was also very sweet, very merciful, very loving. I want to tell you a few stories. One story, I had one god sister. She used to take care of Srila Prabhupada, just like a daughter. He had his apartment in Bombay. There was a big room in the front, which when you came here, it was like a hallway. You walk in, actually a large hallway. Came in, it was like a meeting room, and then there was this one room that was like his darshan room. And he had a chair, not a chair, but like one of those gutties that they have in India. And one of the coffee tables, there was a little hundi box in front of it for people who took donations, and then nice rug on the floor. And people would sit on pillows and rugs all around the floor. And Prabhupada would give darshan every day for an hour or two. People, whoever can, a couple of hours. And behind that room, there was two rooms. His bedroom, and the bedroom for the secretary, and the bathroom. And then, outside that room, at the end of the entrance hall, there was the kitchen for cooking. So she managed that apartment for Prabhupada. In the morning, when Srila Prabhupada would go on his morning walk with all the brahmacharis and sannyasis, all the women would come in the room and she would direct them. Okay, clean this, clean that, this is what to be washed, this is what is sweeping, etc. She would supervise it. And then she would cook every day for Prabhupada. She learned from Pishima and Sumana and the others how to make the Bengali preparations that Prabhupada liked, so she could get the kind of foods that he enjoyed every day. And she would cook shukta and all these different Bengali preparations that were very pleasing to Prabhupada. She learned how to make the rice just the way he liked it, everything. Very nice. So, we're on a morning walk, And this devotee, who was the GBC at the time, Bhagavat, he says to Srila Prabhupada, he said, we're going to have to get someone else to cook and take care of your rooms because Palika is going to America. Prabhupada said, why is she going? She said, oh, some relative has died, she has to go with some neighbors or something. When she's going? She doesn't have enough money to go. So she's trying to collect the money to get a ticket. That's why. So then, later that day, after the morning walk, he goes there, then he gets his breakfast. And it was either after the breakfast or the lunch when she came to take the plates. So then he said to her, so, I heard you're going to America? He was acting like he didn't really know what was going on. I heard you're going to America? Yes, Prabhupada, I have to go to America. Well, why? I have one relative, they died, or paperwork. So when are you going? So, well, I don't have enough money to go. I'm trying to collect the money for the Prabhupada. He said, you know, every day people come here for my darshan, and they put money in this box. He said, I'm not using this money. He said, why don't you take it and get your ticket? He said, well, Prabhupada, I can't take your money. It's not my money. He said, they're putting it in the box. He said, yeah, but they're giving it to you. But I'm not using it. She said, well, I don't feel like I can take your money. He said, it's not my money. He said, it is Krishna's money. He said, and I want you to have it. You take this money and you buy your ticket and you go. So it was so sweet, so intimate, so affectionate, dealing with Prabhupada with his dear disciple, his daughter, Palika. Please take this money and go. Very, very sweet. It's a very beautiful side of Srila Prabhupada. People don't always hear this aspect of Srila Prabhupada. Very sweet and loving relations. One time I cut my foot on the beach with one glass, and I didn't see the sand, and I cut my foot. Then I had to run with bleeding foot through the sand and go to the doctor, and then washed out, and septic. So they had a bandage. So the doctor tells me, you can't get the bandage wet. So I'm in India, right? I'm trying one of those little Indian showers with the chair, and I'm trying to take a bath with my foot up in the air. You know, it's a complete nightmare. You know, I'm trying not to get the bandage wet. You know, in India because everything gets wet easy. Anyway, by the time I took shower and everything, you know, and got cleaned up and got dressed, and my foot, you know, so I come late to the Guru Puja. So Srila Prabhupada is sitting on the Vyasasana, and there's like 50, 60 devotees in the temple room. And they're all, you know, singing Sri Guru Charana Padma, the arti being offered, Prabhupada sitting there, you know, very pensive, you know. So then he looks, he sees me come in, and he sees I have the bandage on my foot. So he moves forward on the Vyasasana, and he calls me over. And he's now he's completely ignoring the Guru Puja. He called me over. I said, what happened? I said, yesterday I cut my foot in the beach, and he said, are you all right? I said, yeah, I'm all right. I went to the doctor. He said, okay, you went to the doctor? I said, yeah, I got the doctor. He gave me medicine and septic on there. Are you sure you're all right? There's no problem? I said, no problem. I'm fine. Okay, I'm going to go to the doctor again today. He said, okay. He said, but if you need anything, you tell me. He said, and I'll personally arrange. It was so sweet. And I felt so loved. Prabhupada said, I will personally arrange. If you need, I will personally arrange. I felt so loved. It was such a beautiful exchange. This was, Srila Prabhupada, this was another side of Prabhupada that we didn't always see, we didn't always understand. Also, Prabhupada, sometimes he was very mystical. In Bombay, they brought this one boy. His parents were very concerned about this young boy. He was about 7, 8 years old. And he was notoriously, very misbehaved child. Constantly doing things, disrespectful to all authority, everything. Very, very misbehaved. So the parents brought him to see Prabhupada because they wanted him to give some blessing to the boy that the boy should behave, So they bring him in the room, and Prabhupada's sitting on the gun, and the kid runs right up, and he gets up on the gun, and he starts going like this to Prabhupada. So Prabhupada starts going, and the two of them, Prabhupada's playing with him like a kid, Prabhupada is fighting him. So they're hysterical, the parents. No, Swamiji, Guruji, don't do this, don't do this. They're open. He said, no, it's okay. Prabhupada's playing. So they said, oh, Swami, this person, this boy, very naughty, very, very naughty. He's misbehaving always, very naughty, he's doing this thing, this thing, this thing. They want to throw him out from the school. What we can do, you please bless him, that he will not be so naughty. I will say, he is not naughty, he is very intelligent. He said, you don't have to worry about this boy. He said, in the future, this boy is going to become a great doctor of Ayurvedic medicine. And every morning, 300 people will line up to get their pulses read by him. He will have so many followers, so many patients. So you go there now to Bombay, there is one doctor, Pankaj Naram. He is there. He was the boy. You know him, Pankaj Naram? He was that boy.
Really?
Yeah.
Dr. Naram?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
He was that boy. He was that boy. Now he's world famous Ayurvedic doctor. Oh, but go. So, one more story I want to tell about, and then I'm going to go to the Srila. Prabhupada was at the airport. I used to go, the person who did the Krishna movies, Ramanand Sagar. I knew him. So I would go to, when Prabhupada was coming or going to the airport, I would go to Ramanand Sagar's house and he had a big Chevrolet, big American car. So I would go get the car and bring it to the temple and pick up Prabhupada and bring him to the airport, pick him up at the airport in this big car. Prabhupada liked that. He liked going with a big American car. So we get to the airport, and in those days you could go right up to the gate. Not like today. We went into the airport at June, went in all the way up to the gate, and we were sitting there. Prabhupada's sitting, he's always very regal. He's got his cane, sitting like this, back and direct, like a king, always. Always very elegant. And he always appears very elegant, very regal, like a swan. Moved very graceful. So he's sitting there, and the devotees are all sitting around, and the GBC is talking with him, Bhagavan, and Giriraj is also talking to him. Some last minute business, they discuss. So then when they finish, then this Palika comes up to him and she says, Prabhupada, can I ask you a question? Yeah. Prabhupada, Pradyumna said that you said that on the second Ekadasi of each month we can bathe the deities, we should bathe the deities in ghee. What? Pradyumna said that you said that on the second Ekadasi of each month we should bathe the deities in ghee. We should bathe the deities every second in ghee? No. Each month there's 2 Ekadasis. Yes. On the second Ekadasi, yes. On that day we're supposed to bathe the deities in ghee. Who said that? Pradyumna said that you said it. Pradyumna. Pradyumna was sitting way in the back, so he comes forward. So, he's standing there. And he said, I want you to listen to her. Then he turns to her and he said, the 2 of them, they're on either side. He's standing, sitting there like this. They're both, bowed at the waist, like this, talking to Prabhupada in the busy airport, so that he hears what they're saying, right? So they're all both bowed at the waist on either side of him, Palika's here and Pradyumna's here. So then, Palika says, she says, the Prabhupada told Pradyumna, he said, I want you to listen to what she says. So then Prabhupada turns to Palika and he said, tell him what I said. So he's looking at Palika and he's making sure that she says exactly the same thing. She says, Pradyumna, do you remember when you told me that Prabhupada said that on the second Ekadasi of each month we're supposed to bathe the deities in ghee? So then Prabhupada, he listened there, and then he turns to Pradyumna and he said, did I say that? So Pradyumna said, no, Prabhupada, you didn't say that. I didn't say that. Then she goes, Pradyumna, how could you say you didn't say that? And the 2 of them start arguing. I never said it. No, you said it. Sit down. And Prabhupada makes them sit down. After a few minutes, he said, this is going on. Prabhupada said. Everyone is saying that Prabhupada said. From now on you should know, if they say that I said it, that means I never said it. So on the way home in the car, I'm sitting there with Sridhar Swami and the others, And Sridhar says, how are we going to explain this to anyone? I said, what? Well, how are we going to tell people that Prabhupada said that when he said it, that means he never said it? We were laughing. This addresses the infamous Prabhupada said. I want to tell you something. Huh? Now, I want to tell you some stories about Prabhupada. So, first, you should know the glories of Srila Govinda. He was born in a very exalted family. His father was initiated in a lineage that could be traced back, disciple, guru to disciple, guru to disciple, guru to disciple, all the way back to Raghuvandan Thakur and Shamananda. So he comes from Shamananda Goswami's lineage, his father. And he used to be part of a bhajan group, you know, just like today we have these bhajan music bands going around performing everywhere. They had a bhajan group, and they would have contests. Who could play the bhajans best? Every year there was a big runoff, you know, and people would come from all the villages to perform and see who plays the bhajans the best. And the bhajans that they played were Narottam Das Thakur. But they played them in the Orison tunes. Yeah. It was very, it's a different, all the tunes, they're like very, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vatsari Gour, Govinda, Hare Krishna, dun 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 dun, and dun 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 dun, this Orison style, it's like, and the music goes like this, very different from the way the Bengalis sing, very different. So, but they do, this is, and they, all night, they sing Narottam Das Thakur's bhajans. So this is the contest. Yeah? So that's his father's side. Now, his mother comes from a lineage like her great-great-grandfather. He was a big merchant. Like three greats back then. He was a big merchant, and he made a lot of money. He established this temple, or this town called Jagannathpur. So in this town, a temple was built later on, a small temple, that the son of this merchant, who was very pious, he became the treasurer at the Jagannath Puri temple. So every day he used to pray to Lord Jagannath, I want you to come in the form of Gopal. I want to worship you, Gopal. So he was waiting that when Gopal would come. In Vrindavan, there was one very elderly Babaji, and he had a Gopal deed. So at night, one night, Gopal comes to him in the dream. Oh, Baba, you take this Thakurji to Puri and give to this man. He is the treasurer there. You give him, he's going to worship me now because you are getting old. And so when the Baba wakes up in the morning, he's thinking, what is this Gopal is telling me? I should give him to somebody in Puri? Must have been a mistake. Can't be real. So he doesn't do anything to prepare for this trip. So then the next night he's sleeping. Gopal comes. Hey, Baba, what I told you? You're supposed to bring me to Puri. You're not bringing me. Then he takes his coward stick, he starts beating him on the leg. Hey, you bring me to Puri. And when you get there, you tell that man to put his hand on your leg, then the marks will go away. When he wakes up in the morning, he had marks all over his legs from the stick. And okay. And he immediately packs up Gopal and he goes to Puri. So when he gets there, the man is so happy, you know, that this deity is coming. And then the man tells him, the Babaji asks him, then he puts his hand on the Babaji's legs and marks all this. So then he tells the Babaji, you should come with me to Jagannath. And I'll build a little temple, and we'll put the deity there, and you'll be the pujari. You can live your days there. So that's what happened. So this temple was there. This was the childhood temple of Govinda Maharaj. He used to go to this temple. And his father used to read every day Srimad Bhagavatam, so many verses, so that in the course of 1 year, the entire Bhagavatam was read. but this was his habit. So every day, Govinda Maharaj used to hear Srimad Bhagavatam, the songs of Narottam Das Thakur, the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra Kirtan all the time. His mother told that when he was small, he would cry, and he would not stop crying till you gave him the Bhagavatam. Then he would hold the Bhagavatam like this, then he would hold it. So this is such a glorious birth. To take birth in a family like this, where your whole life you're hearing the bhajans of Narottam Das Thakur, you're hearing Bhagavatam every day, you're hearing Gita, you're hearing the Kirtan of the Hare Krishna mantra every day. This, and you're sleeping with the Bhagavatam in your chest. You know, this is a very extraordinary birth. So to get this birth, this is not ordinary. This is not. So he was a very determined person, Srila Govinda Maharaj. His father died when he was 16. He had no intention of ever getting married. But his mother told him when he finished college at 22 or 23, she said, "You're the eldest son. The father is now expired. You have to marry and become the head of the household." So he didn't want to do, but she insisted. And in India, when the mother tells the son, "You have to do," then he has to do. This is the rule of Indian culture, Vedic culture. So I asked him one day, when we were sitting together, I said, "Maharaj, you didn't want to get married." He said, "No." I said, "But you married because your mother ordered." He said, "Yes, this is the Vedic culture. The mother orders, we have to marry." I said, "But then your wife, you had 7 children. Why did you have 7 children if you didn't want to get married in the first place?" He said, "It is a principle of Vedic culture. If the wife asks you for a child, you have to give her a child whenever she asks. You cannot say no." So I said, "So does that mean that you never had any relations with your wife except to have children?" He said, "Yes, I had 7 children and I passed semen 7 times. That's it." And I looked at him and I couldn't even imagine it. I couldn't understand. I was a young brahmachari. I was practicing brahmacharya, but still it was beyond, having been raised in America, I couldn't imagine that someone could have such discipline and live with a woman every day and be that controlled. So I could understand, he's not an ordinary person. How is it possible that he could be so disciplined, so controlled with his senses? Then Govinda Maharaj was telling me, there's some, not him, but others were telling me the stories of how when he was about close to 50, maybe 47, 48 years old, when he was older, that he was starting to become very restless. He was a teacher. And he used to teach. He used to teach the classes in English. So then what happened was, little by little, as the years went on, he spent more time teaching about Bhagavatam than he did about English. And he went away on a pilgrimage for his holiday one time. He visited Vrindavan, and when he came back, then he became totally disconnected from his material life. He couldn't think about anything. He couldn't think about his work. He would just come into the classroom in the morning and he'd just tell stories about Krishna all day. He'd never teach the lessons. But gradually he became disconnected from material nature. And one night he ran away. He just packed a small bag of some gopis and kurtas, and in the middle of the night he went away. And he went about 10 miles to this other village, and he stayed on one of these mandaps under the tree. So many people came there to the village to argue with him. You should go back to home, back to your family. No, no, I'm going to take sannyas. I'm leaving. So he left. After 3 days there at that village, he left there and he went to the 4 holy places, because before you take sannyas, it's a tradition. You're supposed to go Rameshwara, Dwarka, Puri, and Hardwar, Badrinath, 4 places. But he went. His name was Brajabandhu, his birth name. But he changed his name to Gour Gopal, because he said he wanted these 2 things, Gour and Gopal. So then he goes to he said that he used to go everywhere. He told me, he said, and I was hearing different people speak, and I will hear what they say, and I will tell them, no, this is not correct, because you are not giving Lord Chaitanya and Gopal. So your teaching is wrong. He said, everywhere I was going, listening, then who will give me Gour Gopal? So finally he came to Vrindavan. So he was in Vrindavan and he was traveling from temple to temple, visiting different temples, just like a sadhu. He had one Gopal deity. He was taking prasad wherever people were giving out prasad. So then he heard people were saying, oh, in Raman Reti, because at that time Raman Reti was far away from the main area of the tent, still far away, but now everything is all connected. Everything is busy everywhere. But in those days, the temple, the Krishna Balaram Mandir, it was in the forest. It was just like a forest there. And Prabhupada bought some forest land and he made a temple. It was like nothing there. So, and there was just this one big road that went out. That road in front of the temple was a big road that went out into the main highway. But there was nothing there. Fogal Ashram was there. That was there was one place, Fogal Ashram. But everything, nothing else was there. It was like a forest. So some people told him, oh, you should go. The Bideshis, I mean the foreigners, the Westerners, the Bideshis are over there. They're giving out kitchery every day. So he decided, okay, I'm going to go there. So he went there. Then, when he got there, he was taking prasad, and they gave him a BTG, and he was looking at the BTG, and he's reading about Prabhupada and what Prabhupada is teaching about Lord Chaitanya and Gopal and everything. So then he immediately understood, this is my Guru. This is the person I've been looking for. So he went and he asked him, he said, I want to meet the Guru. I want to meet him. He was like, he had matted locks and an old an old blanket, and he looked like one of these, sadhus that roam here and there, so they said, no, you can't meet him. No, I want to meet him, I want to meet him. So he's a very determined person. He never lets anything get in his way. So they didn't want, they didn't want him to meet Prabhupada, but he wanted to meet Prabhupada, so he found out where Prabhupada's room was. So then he hid. And he kept looking in the window, waiting, till nobody was in the room and nobody was by the door. And then he went in the door and he went into the room to sit with Prabhupada. He goes in, he offers his obeisances to Prabhupada. Well, Prabhupada treats him like a gentleman. Oh, what is your name? My name is Prabhupada. Where do you come from? Orissa. What is your qualification? I have BA in English and Sanskrit. I studied Sanskrit. How many languages do you know? I know Hindi, Bengali, Sanskrit, Oriya, English, 5 languages. So they're talking, and then the servants come. Prabhupada, is this man disturbing you? No, he's not disturbing you. Go out from him. So he's talking with him for a while. And Govinda Maharaj told me, he said, Prabhupada said to him, okay. He said, I will make you my disciple. He said, and I will train you. He said, and then I will give you sannyas. And then you will go back to your homeland, to Orissa, and you will preach there. And you will make your own disciples. So, right in the, and Govinda Maharaj said, when he said this, I understood. This is a Mahapurush. This is a pure devotee, because everything that was in my heart, that Paramatma was witnessing, he knew. Therefore, I could understand. Here's the external manifestation of Krishna. Here's Paramatma. And he recognized right away who Prabhupada. So then Prabhupada called the servant in. He said, give this man a tablet for writing and an English BTG. So then they brought Prabhupada the tablet for writing, English BTG, and pencil. So he opened it up and he said, here, this article, I want you to my lecture, I want you to translate this into Hindi on this pad. He said, you just go over there and you do it. So he went in the back room. He sat there, he translated the whole thing into Hindi. And then he brought it back in. Prabhupada read it. He said, okay, very good. Then he called him and he said, okay, shave him up. Give him a, set of clothes and give him a room in the laboratory. He's going to be a translator. Immediately. Now he was a very educated person. And we didn't understand who he was. So, the publishing arm was in Bombay. So he comes to the BBT in Bombay right away, Prabhupada. So I'm there in Bombay, and he shows up, and I'm looking at him, and I see that he doesn't socialize with anyone. He's always channeling. I'm thinking, he's one of those. I'm going to channel all the time. I'm not going to talk to anybody. Maya. We were young Brahmin. We didn't know. I was 23, 24. So, and I saw that he was very humble. He was washing big pots, and he was acting like, just a regular person. But he didn't associate with people. He kept to himself. He was standing, And one day we're sitting in the room with Srila Prabhupada, and Gargamuni comes in, and he said, that boy over in the BBT, he said, Prabhupada looked up, boy? That boy, Gour Gopal. Boy? He's not a boy. He's old enough to be your father. Call him a boy? So then I realized, oh, Prabhupada has some respect for him. And so then after that, I was more respectful because I realized, okay, he's an older man. And he didn't look old because he was a brahmachari his whole life. So his skin was always shining and young and, he was brilliant. I thought I didn't realize that he was almost 50. So, after 2 months in Bombay, he got Harinam. And then they decided to move all the translators because there wasn't really enough room for everybody to live in Bombay. So they didn't have enough apartments on the complex, so they moved everybody to Mayapur where they had all these rooms, and all the translation work started going on there. There were people and he started translating into Hindi, into Bengali, into Oriya. He was translating everything. So then, while he was there, after 2 more months, he got Diksha. Now he's in the movement 4 months, he's got Brahman initiation. Prabhupada went there to Mayapur and he gave him Diksha. So then the festival comes around. And I had a traveling party. We used to go around and preach, make life members and stuff. So Govinda, they gave up an acre of land to Prabhupada to build a temple in Bhubaneswar. And Prabhupada calls Govinda and he said, I want you to go to Bhubaneswar. And I want you to open the temple. He said, well, I need some help. Can you give me some help? So he called me to the room. He said, I want you to go with him to preach in Bhubaneswar. Take your brahmachari. I offered my basis as Prabhupada touched me on the head, so I went. So, I wasn't prepared for what we were getting into in Bhubaneswar because nobody, in those days, nobody spoke any English. You couldn't find anyone. Nobody spoke Hindi. We had no books in Oriya. I had books in English and I had books in Hindi. I had no books in Oriya. So there was nothing, I couldn't sell anything. I couldn't distribute any literature. I couldn't make any collections. So we were in a lot of difficulty. And every day, there was 6 or 7 of us, and I'm paying for the room, and I'm paying for food. We were eating from the Ananta Vasudev temple in Old Town. There was the Lingaraj and then the Ananta Vasudev. I was eating at the Ananta Vasudev. We were staying in a dharmshala connected to the Ananta Vasudev. So I'm trying to figure out how to make this work, and it's not working. So we're down to no money. So I said to Gour, I said, I don't know what we're going to do. We have no more money. I can't maintain all these brahmacharis without money. We have no place to stay. I can't pay for the room. I can't pay for the food. What am I supposed to do? So he said, well, depend on Krishna. And he was like, that was the way it was. I said, well, but I have to be practical. I got to maintain everybody, and I don't have anything to maintain them. So then I said, look, I arranged, because I had done this earlier, about a month earlier, I had arranged for 2 cars on a train to go from Calcutta to Hyderabad for the next leg of the festival. So those 2 cars were there. I knew we could get on those train cars and go to Hyderabad with Prabhupada, and then we could, work it out from there. So I told him, I said, I think we should get on this train and go to see Prabhupada in Hyderabad and explain to him what's going on. He said, no, I'm staying here. Prabhupada told me to stay here, I'm staying here. So I didn't want to leave him alone, so I said, well, you're a brahmachari, and brahmachari can't stay alone. Only a sannyasi can stay alone. So you have to come. So he was very frustrated. He realized, he said, okay. So then we all get on the train and we go there. When we get to Hyderabad, Prabhupada, what are you doing here? He said, come tomorrow morning and talk to me. So the two of us came. I started explaining all these things to Prabhupada about all the difficulties. And he was shaking his head like, okay, he's not ready yet to surrender this. Well, he made it. So he understood where I was at, that I was not capable of making the kind of surrender that was necessary. The Srila Govinda Maharaj looks at Srila Prabhupada and he said, I want to go back. And he said, okay. He said, can you give me sannyas? I want to take sannyas. So Srila Prabhupada sitting there, he's been in the movement maybe six and a half months. And all the big shots are there. The big GDCs and sannyasis are sitting in the room, And Prabhupada, he's looking at the situation, he's trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to measure this? So he was Prabhupada was like very, very clever. He said, so, do you understand what it means to take sannyas? Let me explain to you what it means to take sannyas. First, the sannyasi should be fearless. He starts to explain the meaning of sannyas. You should never be afraid of anything. You should be willing to go anywhere to preach for Krishna without any fear, without any care. That he should always know that he's not alone, that Krishna is always with him. He should always know that he should have, the first thing, of course, the first thing he said was no sex life, Sex life is finished, you be detached from all sex desire. Like this, he was explaining the meaning of sannyas. So after explaining all the details of what the meaning of sannyas was, Prabhupada turned to him and he said, so, do you understand what it means to take sannyas? Govinda said, yes. So then just at that moment, the servant comes in with his breakfast. So the breakfast is put on the table and everybody gets up and they have to leave the room. So I go in the room with the secretaries and with some of the sannyasis in GBC. And everyone's scratching their heads. He asked if he could take sannyas, and Prabhupada told him what it meant to take sannyas, but he didn't say yes or no. He didn't tell him yes, he didn't tell him no, he didn't say anything. He just said, do you understand? So everyone was befuddled. Nobody knew what the two of them knew between each other. So then when we got to Vrindavan, so on the last day of the Vrindavan festival, there was a fire yajna for the initiations. And Tripurari Maharaj took sannyas at that time. So they saw 2 dandas and 2 sets of cloth. And they knew Tripurari was taking sannyas, but they didn't know who else was taking sannyas. So then Govinda Maharaj takes sannyas at this time. And when Prabhupada gives him the danda, he says, you have understood. It was like they had a psychic communication between each other, what they were going to do, and they did it. And so then after he takes sannyas, then everybody storms into Prabhupada's room. He's a new man, he's a new devotee, blah, 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 blah. We've been in here for years before we took sannyas. Prabhupada said, you're the new man. And he's been a devotee since birth. And you're new man. So, then he went back. And he struggled. And he worked hard. And then Prabhupada made him go back there again. And stay with him. For 3 years I stayed with him. In that mud hut in the middle of the jungle, where wild boars with tusks used to roam. And big snake. I remember during the rainy season, I'm standing with like a little 2-foot veranda around the side of the hut, the mud hut that we lived in. And the veranda was a slab of concrete. So during the rainy season, it created a big crevice, under the concrete. And the hole was there. I'm standing on the veranda and this big black snake, like about this thick, and about 10, 12 feet long, comes out from underneath the mud hut, you know. So I said to Gour, I came in the room and I said, Govinda, Maharaj, big snake out there, came from under the house. He's completely unfazed. Yeah, he lives here also. He lives here also. He was also very careful about translating Prabhupada's books into Oriya. There are two stories, and they're both very interesting. In Allahabad, he says to Prabhupada, when I'm translating the word for word, you know, I have one, you know, that's one thing. He said, but when I'm translating the sentences and the purports, he said, sometimes I understand what you're saying, but to do the exact word-for-word translation of the sentence, it would be too clumsy in Oriya. He said, so I know what it is you're saying, so I write the sentence in Oriya expressing the meaning of your sentence. He said, but then I'm thinking I'm changing your books. So I'm concerned about that. He said, so what should I do? Prabhupada said, I'm doing like that. He said, I read what the acharyas are saying in Sanskrit, in the commentaries, and then I express it in my own way in English language. He said, so you should do as I am doing. You do like this. So like this, he was very, you know, very careful, you know, to make sure that he was doing what Prabhupada wanted with the translation of the books. And then he had later on when he was doing the Gita and he was doing the word-for-word translation, he wanted to make sure that the word-for-word was done properly. Because he started to explain to me, he said, when I look at the Sanskrit word, I know that in general, the Sanskrit word would be explained in Oriya with a particular word. He said, but Prabhupada has chosen an English word to explain this Sanskrit word. And that English word, if I translate that English word into Oriya, it would be different from the Oriya word that would usually be used to explain the Sanskrit word. He said, so I'm concerned that the Pandits are going to look at this and think that the translation is not proper. So I said, so, well, what are you going to do? He said, I'm making a note of each one of these things, which is difficult. And I'm going to put them in a list. And then I'm going to see the Sanskrit scholar who taught me Sanskrit in school when I was in college. So after he finished, then he left and went to see the Sanskrit scholar. He was gone for about maybe 10 days or 2 weeks, and then he came back. But when he came back, he brought the scholar with him. So the scholar comes into the hut, and he's sitting there, and he said, I wanted to meet you, because I wanted to see the fruit of this Gita, and how this Gita made Westerners devotees. I said, well, it was very kind of you to come. And then he said, you know, your Swami, meaning Gour Govinda Maharaj, he was very insistent. He told me to find the meanings, the English meanings of these Sanskrit words. And when I looked at what your guru wrote, and then I looked at the Sanskrit, and I looked at my dictionary, the first pass, I said, no, this English word is not used to explain this Sanskrit word. But he was very insistent. He said, if my Guru Maharaj said it, then it must be there. I want you to look deeper, look in more books, look for synonyms, look for this, look for that. He said, so because he pushed me, he said, I looked very, very deep. Of course, what was actually going on was Gour Govinda was doing it, by his potency. But he was using the scholar because he needed his name on the book. So the scholar said, I said, I'm 70 years old. He said, I've been studying Sanskrit since I'm 5. He said, and when I looked deeply into the books, I finally found all these words that your Guru Maharaj, Prabhupada, used to translate the Sanskrit words into English. He said, I found the English words. He said, but I never would have thought to use any of those English words to explain these Sanskrit words, even though I'm so familiar with Sanskrit. And I know English very well. He spoke excellent English. He said, I never would have thought to do this. Never. He said, but when I looked at those English words in the verse and how the English words are explained in the verse, how they explain the meaning of the verse, I realized that without choosing the particular words that he chose, the real hidden meaning of the verse would not have come out in the English language. He said, so the words that he chose were very deep because they actually express the very deep inner meaning of the verse in English. He said, therefore I can understand your Guru was one of the greatest Sanskrit scholars. Otherwise, how he could extract this information. So this was the nature of Srila Govinda Maharaj. Very, very determined to do it the way Prabhupada taught him to do it. He was very devoted. Every morning he would chant rounds, go to Mangal Arati, chant more rounds, do prayers, do devotions, do translation work. He had all these things that he had to do. Write his diary. He had all these things that he had to do for hours. For like 4 or 5 hours he would do all these things. And he wouldn't eat or drink until he finished all of it. That was his vow. When I finish all this, then I can take breakfast. He was very, very determined. Very determined to make everything happen in a certain way. And he was always engaged. He would never waste any time. He was always very kind to me. I remember he would sit with me and he would translate Gour Ganadeshi Dipika, Radha Krishna Ganadeshi Dipika, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Hari Bhakti Vilas, the different books. They were all in Sanskrit and Bengali, and he would translate them into English for me, by spoken. He would explain them. He said, oh, they're saying this, and they're saying this. He would teach me from the books. Well, like this, I took much shiksha from him when I was living with him as a young brother. It's a very, very wonderful example. He was always very devoted. It's getting a little late. And I see some people are getting restless and tired. There's more stories I could tell. But what I'm thinking is I'm going to New Jersey tomorrow, and I'm going to be there for a week. And then I'm actually coming back here and staying with Madhu Mangal for a few days. So if you want, when I come back, I can tell some more stories the next time. You want that?
You have a short story about this Guru Maharaj?
Huh?
Do you have a short story about this Guru Maharaj?
Yeah. I have stories about Madhu Gopal. I used to go preaching with him. Prabhupada ordered me and Gaur Govinda to preach with him. So I used to go preaching with him. He was a very sweet and humble person. Huh? Srila Bhakti Vaibhav Puri Maharaj. And he was very enthusiastic, always. And the thing I remember most, there's one pastime with him that I remember. When I was telling you before about that train, you were on that train with the two cars going from Calcutta to Hyderabad. So it traveled all night, and in the early morning, around 8 a.m., it arrived in Rajmundry, which is in South India, and it's a very important stop. And he had a temple there. And when the train pulled in, he was there on the platform with his brahmachari, with huge pots full of khichdi and puris, so that we could eat prasadam and not eat train food. And he personally served all the devotees the prasad, and he served them the puris. He had all his brahmacharis serving out and seeing that all the devotees were served fresh hot khichdi and puris for breakfast. And we were so grateful. He was so sweet and so humble. He was such a, no one asked him, no one said that he heard about it. And he wanted to do service to the Vaishnava. He was always doing service to the Vaishnava. That's such a wonderful attitude, enthusiastic attitude. And I was there when he was building that temple in Berhampur. I stayed there for a couple of days in Berhampur. At that time, there was no temple there. He was building it. One man had donated a mountain that was on his farm. The mountain was made of stones. So he donated all the stones from the mountain. And another man had a trucking company and construction workers. So he went out with the trucks and the construction workers and took all the stones and put them in the truck and brought them there. And somebody else donated the cement. And then they were building it. So like this, everybody donated their time and their efforts simply by his devotion. He got everyone to contribute and build this temple out of stone and cement. It was just stones from the mountain with cement. And they built it, and they built this temple in Berhampur. This was his first, there was this temple that he built in Berhampur. And he would take me out preaching. He would call the rickshaw to come. He'd say, okay, come on, Bhagavat, we're going preaching. So he would get a rickshaw, and he would sit on one side of the rickshaw. Of course, I was a lot thinner then. He would sit on one side of the rickshaw and say, come on, come sit here. He'd make me sit next to him on the rickshaw. And I would sit with him, and we'd go, to different places. So when we get there, he's talking in Oriya and Hindi or whatever, He was talking and he was telling them, he said, so this is the disciple of my godbrother, Swami Prabhupada. He came from America. He gave up, came from a wealthy family, this and this, like this he was talking. Then now he's going to teach you Gita. He's going to tell you verses from Gita. So then he would have, he'd say, okay, now you, so then I would recite the verses in Sanskrit from Gita. And then, but like this, we would go and we would preach, and it would entrap people. But he was so humble and so sweet and so enthusiastic and so encouraging. I had my time with him was brief, but it was very sweet and very I really appreciated him. Huh? Yeah, I have so many pastimes I want to tell about Narayan Maharaj, but it's going very late now. It's 9:30. When I come next time, then I will do more pastimes, because there's also many more things I can tell about Prabhupada, about Govinda Maharaj, many things about Narayan Maharaj. I've not told all these things. So next time I come, then I will start again. And maybe we'll start with Narayan Maharaj, then we'll go to Govinda Maharaj again, and then we'll go to Prabhupada again. Is that okay? Thank you all very much for attending the classes this week. I really appreciate it. I hope you got opportunity to learn. You know, in 2009 at the Italian festival, Gurudev said to me, I have attracted so many disciples all over the world by preaching about the pastimes of Radha and Krishna. He said, but they don't follow the fundamental principles. They don't know the fundamentals of the philosophy. He said, I want you to go everywhere and teach them what is the fundamental philosophy. This is what we did this week. We taught Guru Tattva, Advaigyan Paratattva, Shakti, Vigraha Tattva, and Jiva Tattva, everything, all the fundamental tattvas we taught. When I come next time, I can tell more stories. Is that okay? I want to thank all of you. You were all very kind to me. You took care of me so nicely. You made nice prasadam for me. Gave me a nice place to stay. Mother Camilla was so kind to me. Took care of me like a son. Anjali was so kind to me. She made so many arrangements. What is that? Oh, sure. And Neela Madhava and Vishaka and Manjari every day picking me up and taking me back and all these things. Anjali sending out all these emails everywhere and they invite me over their house. Lalita and Krishna Das made so many arrangements, cooked special prasadam for me. The doctor took care of me last night. And I want to tell you something. Most important, one of the most important qualities, most important things is forgiveness. Huh? And always giving people another chance. You know that Thomas Edison, when he invented this light bulb, he tried 100 times to make a light bulb. And he kept making mistakes. And then finally, he was coming to the right diameter of the bulb to fit on top of the filament, you know. So there was a young boy, and he gave the young boy the responsibility of carrying the glass bulb to place on the filament. So the boy was so excited because they were all convinced that this was going to be the right one, that he ran with the bulb in his hand and he tripped and fell and it broke. So he became very upset and he went in the corner and he was crying. So then they made another glass bulb. And then when they were ready to bring it, Thomas Edison said, wait. And then he called that boy and he brought the boy and he gave him the bulb. He said, okay, now you do it correctly. Gave him another chance and very carefully brought the bulb and brought it. And then that was the bulb. That was the one. And finally, after 100 tries, he finally got it. And the light bulb went on. And that was the first electric bulb. And Prabhupada also, you know, he had a sannyasi. First sannyasi to give up his sannyas. And so he had read in the Chaitanya Charitamrita where Mahaprabhu had rejected Chota Haridas for looking at a woman. So this sannyasi who now was married to this woman, he came, he was crying in front of Prabhupada and said, I read that Lord Chaitanya rejected Haridas. Are you going to reject me? What will I do if you reject me? Prabhupada said, Lord Chaitanya is God. He can make the whole world Krishna conscious by himself. He said, I am just a devotee who's trying to serve Lord Chaitanya. He said, I need your help. He said, I need everyone's help. I need your help. He said, can you help me? Can you preach for me? Can you manage one temple for me with your wife and preach the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? Be engaged? He said, then I will be happy. But Prabhupada, he never rejected and he always gave everyone a chance. Gave them another chance. As long as they could engage somehow or other in Krishna's service, he gave them another chance. So, I was remembering that today. There was some mistake yesterday when I was giving some prasadam. A mistake was made. But I was remembering all these things. And so I asked Louisa, okay, don't worry, it's over now. The mistake is done. But you make that preparation again today for me, and you bring it, and then we're done. She made again this preparation. But this is forgiveness. This is important. Even Haridas Thakur, he prayed to Mahaprabhu that these people are beating me in 22 marketplaces, but I want you to forgive them. And please forgive them. Mahaprabhu said, oh, what could I do? When he met Haridas, he said, I wanted to stop them, but you wouldn't let me. So I couldn't stop them from beating you. So I took the beating, Mahaprabhu said. I took it on my back. This forgiveness is very important. We have to forgive, and we have to give everyone more and more chances to serve Prabhupada and to be greater than Krishna. This is the mission of Maharaj.
Just one chance.
Not just one. 1,000,001. More than that. As many as it takes. I'm trying not just to teach by my words, but by my example. Okay, so now I have some prasad here. So if everyone comes up, I give you all some spoonful of prasad. Thank you all again very much. I really appreciate it. And I'll be back next weekend and we can have some more classes. Bye.
Bhagavat Maharaj.